Here we are. Happy Friday to everybody. Welcome to another meetup. This is our fifth meetup of the week that we're doing here in the Data on Kubernetes community. My name is Bart Farrell, if you don't know me already. We can get some links on my screen so you can check us out, the Data on Kubernetes community, our website, our Slack, our LinkedIn, Twitter. We're always open to meeting with as many different people as possible. We have a very special guest with us today for our 36th meetup, which is a profile of folks that we need to get more of on our meetups. That's what I was just talking about with Kunal. The Kubernetes space is very big in every sense, geographically speaking, culturally speaking, in terms of languages. It's our goal to create as many meetups in as many different languages as possible. I'll have to find out how many languages you speak, Kunal, because that's another asset. No, seriously. And today, unfortunately, I would say, unfortunately, we have to remind everybody, but we're very proud to do this, that we stand shoulder to shoulder with the CNCF in solidarity with the recent unfortunate events related to attacks on Asian and AAPI colleagues. Totally inappropriate. We do not tolerate intolerance. We stand 100% against that. When we talk about community, we talk about community in every sense of the word. We're not talking about just in a technical sense, in a technological sense. We're talking very much in a human sense, and that's something we can touch on later, because one of the things that Kunal mentioned about Kubernetes that makes it so different is the community aspect, and I want to know more about your perspective of exactly what that means. Anyway, we're here with Kunal, who is a very dynamic young person who's extremely active in a lot of different things. I don't think we're gonna have enough time to talk about all of them, or probably not even half of them. People tell me that I'm involved in a lot of stuff. I found out about Kunal, I think, through LinkedIn, through some Red Hat folks, about seeing some stuff you were involved in. And it was very clear, I need to get in touch with this person. I need to see what's going on. Kunal, welcome to the Data on Kubernetes community meetup. Very happy to have you here with us today. Who are you and what are you doing?
Well, first of all, thanks a lot for having me, Bart. Really excited to be here. And I really appreciate the work you're doing with the DOK community. My name is Kunal. I'm a junior from India. I've been contributing to open source since I was in my freshman year. And I was just like, the way I started was, I was like, imagine this, like a young person just starting out with college. I was learning like tools and frameworks and languages and all these things. So the thing that I lacked was like, okay, I have chosen computer science as a career, but I'm not doing cool things, right? I've seen in like movies and stuff, like, computer people are like making cool things and, working on projects that are being used by people around the world. So that's when I was attending this webinar by Red Hat, and they mentioned something about open source. I didn't know about what that was. So I started like, started seeing like, oh, such large scale projects. I've been using all my life and I did not know about open source. For example, VLC, right? Chromium, Firefox. So then I was like, okay, let's try this out. And I was looking for projects in terms of like Java related projects. So found this like Java client by Kubernetes Java client by Red Hat, middleware, just JBoss community. And I was like, whoa, how am I going to contribute to this? Like, imagine I was a freshman that time. And when I saw the GitHub repo, I was like, I can't do this. This is not going to work out because the code was so overwhelming for me. But that's when the community came in. So the community was like, it's cool. Take your time, learn about Docker, learn about K8s, here are a few resources, Dockerize your own application, so on and so forth. And that's when I realized like open source is for everyone. And the second thing I realized was that every contribution counts. And ever since then, I haven't like stopped. And there's two things to everything that I do. One is working on nice projects, real world projects that are actually, helping people, helping the community in one way or the other. And second thing is just, helping the community basically. So that I do in terms of like, in my sophomore year, I got this hang of teaching. So I really like teaching. I teach a lot of people. I conduct webinars, workshops, go to events, meet a lot of nice people. So yeah, I believe if it like open source, we'll talk more about that later, is much more than just coding. It's also about the community aspect of the organization. So yeah, we're looking forward to talking more about Data on Kubernetes, and thanks for having me over here, Bart, and the entire community.
Very, very good. So let's just take that a little bit further, because you mentioned open source. What are the things that you think that a lot of folks your age might not know about open source, contributing to projects like that they should know? And then some of the barriers that they might encounter that could be improved?
The first one is imposter syndrome, right? So when they first look at the project, they're like, this is so big and this is such an overwhelming project. But they don't realize that even the most complex projects, see, the simple example is beginner-friendly issues exist for a reason, right? And there's one more point, like you don't even have to be a coder in order to contribute to open source. I mean, talking about Kubernetes itself, right? There are so many important roles that do not require coding, right? So that is something that, students have a misconception about. Like there's this thing they are stuck in, which is called the tutorial hell. So basically what they're trying to do is, let me first finish this entire course and then I'll contribute. Let me first finish this entire playlist and let me just become a master in Golang, then I'll contribute, or something like that. But the way I look at it is, you should follow a learn by doing approach, learn by contributing, learn while contributing, because the community is there to help you. And I can go on and on regarding what issues students face, when first starting out with contribution. Code seems overwhelming. They are having trouble, finding good first issues. They're just shy, for example. They are not interacting with the organization. They feel shy in just, sending a DM on the group channel, or like a message on the group channel. So a lot of things are over there when we are first talking about, like when a new student, who has not been introduced to open source, gets an idea about it. And that's when they start by, they have this, like the students that I interact with, they ask me, hey Kunal, I know Python, can you suggest me, like, so if I can do open source contributions or not? I'm like, yeah, definitely you can. But if you look at any of these, nice projects, such big projects, they're not just using one thing, right? They're using so many things. And I believe that if you find yourself in a place, to all the students out there, if you find yourself in a place where you don't know much about the things that are being used in the project, you can take that as in an optimistic way, because two things: now you'll get to learn new things, and you also get to contribute, right? So if you're working on a one project that you know already everything about already, so you're not getting to grow your skill set, right? You're not getting to experiment. And that is what I mentioned about open source. It's a really great way to get real world experience from the comfort of your home, especially from a student's point of view. And the community is there to help you. You just have to have an open mind to learn and, ask questions, collaborate, and, start with beginner friendly issues and contribute in any way you can. Does not even have to be like code at first. You can just, get involved and improve the documentation. For example, documentation is something an organization cannot get enough of, right? So improve the documentation and go to events, network with people, write a blog, teach about it to other people, just be active in the community. And then, like, we'll talk more about like how to get started with the coding part of open source and stuff. For example, like, you can look at the test cases, write some nice test cases for the project. And looking at the test cases is also a great way to understand the structure of the project. So all these things are like, I talked about a lot of things that students face. And I believe like many communities are tackling this issue pretty well, because they're, very welcoming, first of all, to newcomers. For example, the CNCF ecosystem. And there have been so many open source programs started by so many organizations, like, Outreach, Google, there's Google Summer of Code, there's Linux Foundation mentorships, and so many other open source programs. So I believe that's great as well. But yeah, that's a bit about it.
No, I think it's very, very good points. And I think it's also really important, as you mentioned, that there are many different roles. I think that everybody has a part to play. And that was one of the things that I learned as well through now being in the contributor experience SIG, and you're also there as well too, in the CNCF. We have the meeting later today, is that you don't have to have 10 years of programming experience or even 1 year of programming experience. Really what it requires is 1 hour a week to attend a meeting, and that's enough. And even if you can't, because of time zone differences and now there's more asynchronous communication, you can be involved in lots of different ways. I think for a lot of people, it's just like, you can just go be an observer, be a listener, be enthusiastic, and you will be welcomed. And that spirit of welcoming, I think, is really, really important beyond just the technical side, but just on the human side. Because I can imagine you're interacting with people from how many different countries every week?
I have lost count.
You probably don't even know. But if you had to guess, 5, 10, how many?
I would say 8, 9, something like that.
Yeah. And with that, you get lots of knowledge from those people, from those experiences. What are the things that you've learned since you started working on open source projects?
So yeah, the thing that I have learned is like, from a student's point of view, open source has helped me quite a lot, both in terms of like getting opportunities and, networking with a lot of people and learning from other people. So open source has been just a very important part of my career in my first, few years of college that I have had. I'm in my junior year right now. So like, I'm going to be graduating in 2022. So yeah, the things that I have learned, I'm going to like summarize that. You don't have to be a pro to contribute to open source. You can learn on the go, and you can just, the important point over here is like learning how to ask good questions is also something that I have learned via open source. So learning how to ask good questions and giving and receiving feedback. So the importance of giving and receiving feedback, being a working with a team, for example, and working towards a goal and working in a community, for example. And there's this quote I really like, which is like, no one is async unless everyone is async. So mostly I get questions like someone is asking you a question. Mostly students do this. They are just like they will just send you a hi, right? And then 12 hours have passed, and then you see that hi, and then you send them a hi. And now 24 hours have passed, but your doubt isn't still resolved. So that is what I tell the students, like, learn how to ask good questions. And in order to receive good feedback, that is also something I've learned from open source, is you have to provide enough context, right? So if you're just like, hey, facing this issue, what do I do? So that's not a good way to ask a question, right? You can be like, I did this is the issue I faced, this is what I tried, but I'm still getting this error, what do I do over here? And that will let the people who are working with the project, the maintainers and the community members, resolve your doubts much more efficient way. But from a skill set point of view, I've learned both technical skills from open source and soft skills as well. I went to KubeCon in San Diego in 2019. That was amazing. Met a lot of nice people, met DIMS, and a lot of amazing people I met from the community. And there was this diversity event lunch we had. There was this amazing party, which was Kates or Die. And it was a really nice party. It was like a really fun environment over at KubeCon. Hopefully, like, I don't know when we are going to have another in-person event, but really looking forward to it. But yeah, after that, I've been also attending a few KubeCon virtual events. And I also got to be a part of one of the talks. That was amazing. Like, shout out to the Prometheus community, Bartek and Julius and everyone. They were like, we should do a podcast sort of a thing for KubeCon. So in KubeCon Europe last year, we did like a podcast sort of a thing, and I was hosting that session. So that was a great experience. So yeah, the whole thing I've learned is like the community is very welcoming. And to summarize, if you're doing good work, it will get noticed, right? And if you're doing good work and you're helping others, it's not about like basically what I'm trying to say is that if you're doing good work, if you're learning, it's going to help you as well, both in terms of, let's say, improving your technical skills, having a good work experience from a student's point of view. Because I see, like, in freshman year and sophomore year, students are like, hey, I'm not getting any internships because I don't have anything to put on my resume. For those of you who don't know, like, mostly internships in India happen in around junior year, right? So for the first 2 years, students don't really have much options for internships in like big companies. I was fortunate enough to find out about open source from a very early stage. So by the end, I'm in my third year right now. So till now, I have had like so many things on my resume, and everything on my resume is open source. So
I have a question about that though too, is that what is the role of universities in all this? Should universities be promoting, open source options more to students at an early age?
Most definitely. I think, like, see, in university, I don't know about other countries, but like in India,
in the case of India,
but this is like, I believe, common to, because everyone has to submit projects, right? That is, I believe, common to every particular degree in various colleges. So what happens over here is that they just require us to submit a certificate, right? Now that particular certificate does not really have enough proof that the student has actually, learned or contributed in a project, right? So you can just go to some online certification course, let's say like Udemy or something, and then you can just take the certificate and show it to your teacher, and then you get marks. That is what's happening in my college, at least, and in a lot of colleges as well. Open source, on the other hand, there's proof of concept, right? On GitHub, there's there's just like, on GitHub, it's like plain and simple, right? Everything is visible, and you can show your skill set and all the commits and everything, history of your graph and everything. So I believe having that as an alternative in order to showcase, hey, you had your summers, right? What did you do in summers? Well, I contributed this nice open source project. You can see this is the PR I got merged, and so many events I attended, and so many contributions I did. I believe that's a great thing to include. In my college, like, I have been doing this. I am promoting this with other students as well. So I'm like, you can definitely put your open source contributions in your resume, because that counts as a valid work experience, right? You're engaging with the organization, contributing to a really big project.
Right.
And that is very important for a student to get real world experience. And open source is a great way to do that. And it's like you will also get so many opportunities via open source, right? If people are recognizing the great work you're doing, like reach out to them, right? Hey, I've been contributing this project. I see that your organization is working on this and that. I've been contributing to this for so much time. And do you have any like internship openings or something like that? That's, I believe, totally fine, because they are, I mean, obviously people need good people, right? For their roles and responsibilities. And so if you're doing good work in public, if you're doing these open source contributions stuff, so yeah, definitely you can, reach out to a lot of people.
I think it's a great point. Yeah, I think that's it. Is be open about it, because that way you're establishing a track record. People can see what you've worked on. If you're applying for a job or applying for an internship, you don't have to believe me. Go look at my repos. Go look at my contributions.
Exactly.
These other people can tell you what I'm doing. So I think it's a great piece of advice for young people, and it's never too early to start. Once again, all you have to do is attend some meetings, check out the documentation, ask questions. Like you said, learn how to ask the right questions by giving context. And also understanding as well, a very important point that you mentioned that's difficult for young people, or can be challenging for everybody. Feedback, getting as well as giving. Sometimes one can be more difficult than the other, or the opposite. And being transparent and knowing that people aren't telling you things to make you feel bad. They're telling you those things to help you improve. So understanding the mindset that needs to go in there. Now, let's move it over more towards Kubernetes. You mentioned about when you learned about Kubernetes in our brief conversation on LinkedIn, but when did you first hear about Kubernetes?
I first heard about Kubernetes when I was attending a session by Red Hat. It was by DevNation something. It was like intro to K8s, I believe, something related to containers and stuff. So I didn't know much about it. I was just attending and like seeing what questions people were asking and what all things are happening. So I knew about like virtualization and stuff, but I did not know about containerization. This was in the end of my freshman year. So then I just went online and I saw like, okay, what are some nice projects that I can contribute to in Java? Because I love Java. And currently I'm like, one thing that I summed up from KubeCon was, if you want to contribute to CNCF projects, like most of the projects are in Golang. So I'm now learning Golang as well. But in my freshman year, I was like really, really into Java, and I still am. So I was looking for projects related to Java, and this one I found like the Fabricate.io K8s client for Java. So basically it allows us to like manage Kubernetes resources by writing code in Java basically. So I just looked at the community and I just started using the project, because that is a very important point. If you don't use the project, right? So if you don't know what the project does, you will find it very difficult to contribute.
Right.
So yeah. So before even going to the contribution part or anything like that, just use it. Like what the project is doing, go to the documentation and try to use it as a user. And then after that, I started with like just going through the repo, looking at the test cases, asking questions and doubts. Simultaneously, I was learning about K8s and Docker and all these things like OpenShift and stuff, and like Maven and Java related things. So I was learning about all these things like simultaneously. And then I started like contributing with like the documentation and some examples in Java and some test cases I wrote. And that's how I started basically. And then I applied to Google Summer of Code, and then I was selected in Google Summer of Code when I contributed to in the same project. I added some nice, I would say valid contributions. Like, definitely every contribution counts. This was more like a serious contribution sort of thing, like adding support for new resources, like subject access review and template, service catalog. All these things were missing support back in the time in that particular resource. So I added support in the K8s client for these resources. And then when at KubeCon, I believe in KubeCon China, this project was mentioned. Like, and that when I was watching that talk, I felt good. Like the code I'm writing is actually being used by so many people, right? So after that, my mentor was like, hey, there's this thing called KubeCon, my GSOC mentor. And he was like, you should definitely, look at, and since you're active in the community, it will be really beneficial for you. You can meet a lot of people, learn about a lot of things. And there's this diversity scholarship sort of thing you can fill out. I did that. I got selected. Then I went to KubeCon and I met a lot of nice people, attending the K8s Contributor Summit, which was a lot of nice, got a nice insights on that. And yeah, over there, I just saw like the community was really welcoming. They had like different tracks as well. So had like a complete beginner track, and they had another intermediate sort of a track. So that's when I realized like the community is very inclusive over here, and even beginners can contribute to, such nice projects. And yeah, ever since then I've been involved in open source and communities.
And what advice would you, or what do you think are the typical doubts that young people have when they hear about Kubernetes? That, oh, this is too overwhelming. I don't have the skill level to get there. There's no way I can get in. Obviously, that hasn't been your case. But what are the doubts that you think that people might have, or maybe similar to what you mentioned earlier about open source projects, about imposter syndrome, getting feedback, maybe the similarities, differences? What do you think is out there in terms of doubts?
In terms of doubts, yeah. So when we're talking about like K8s, so it's not just like a container orchestration engine, right? It's much more than that. It supports like automation, deployment, scaling, and you're managing your, applications and stuff. So yeah, this is a doubt that people have. Like it's a container orchestration engine. It is much more than that. It's also like mentioned on the website. You can have like automatic rollouts, and there's like storage orchestration, load balancing, configuration management, secrets, and like authorizations, and like you can also manage your CI workloads. There's like self-healing, horizontal scaling, and so on and so forth. Many things are provided over here. So that's the one thing that I would mention. Other thing is from a student's point of view, when we hear about Kubernetes, it's good to like see K8s is amazing, right? A lot of people are using it, and a lot of people are also not using it. Right. So it's definitely about like, we're talking about like microservice infrastructures, right? So it totally depends on what the use case of your project or your company is, because not everyone is using K8s. Many people are also using like more abstract layer tools, right, which handles everything in the back end. Some are using more hybrid infrastructure, some are using more like dynamic infrastructures, and some are using like more I want more control over my infrastructure, like the infrastructure as code, and like infrastructure as service, platform as a service, software as a service. So to sum up, like it totally depends on like your use case. Okay, that's pretty much about it. If you need more control, you can have like more like infrastructure based service, and if you need like, if you just want to worry about the code that you're writing and don't want to manage like all the nitty gritty part of servers and resources and all these things, basically paying for what you're using. There's one more thing that is really I'm getting interested in right now, which is serverless, right? Paying for what you're using. That's also pretty cool. So yeah, regarding that, from a learning point of view, most definitely you can go ahead with Kubernetes, try to experiment with it. And it's not like you have to be a pro expert to just get involved in the community. Like I mentioned, it's sort of like getting repetitive, but learn while you're contributing, explore while you're contributing.
And I can say the same thing is because like you really, if you're listening to this, if you're watching this, you can get into SIG right now. You just have to go to the Kubernetes Slack.
If you try to
yourself and say like, hey, I'm interested in doing this, somebody will reach out and help you. That's it. That's all you got to do.
Basically, yeah. If you try to go to if you go to the Kubernetes documentation, like there's a nice tutorial and stuff. So many resources are there for Kubernetes, so many objects that are available over there. If you try to be a master in like every single one of those before contributing, it's going to take a lot of time, right? And it's not really efficient as well. So learn on the go, and there are so many SIGs, right? Literally. For SIGs, I would suggest watch the Contributor Summit videos on YouTube. It gives a really nice understanding of how to go ahead with the exploration part. Those videos are really helpful. But yeah, to sum up, just get started, and yeah, that's what I would suggest.
Very, very good. Now, if we're going to take this a little bit further on the technical side, let's talk a little bit more about, our community is very much interested, was created based on this idea of how can you run stateful workloads on Kubernetes? What are the best ways to do that? Of course, as you said, apart from that as a more of a niche topic, whether or not someone's going to use Kubernetes or not, that's once again based on use cases, based on needs, scenarios, all those different things. But for you, when did you first encounter the idea of data on Kubernetes? Was it about persistent volume? Was it about storage, stateful versus stateless? How did you encounter that? What are the things that came to mind? What do you think about that in general?
Yeah, so let's talk about, like you mentioned, stateful versus stateless, right? So the thing is, like, basically, like when we're talking about stateful applications, so containers don't, if your container is storing some sort of a data, right, inside the container, and containers are basically like, just your in an isolated environment, let's say you have like so many things running, and you're like, this is something like you might have heard about, like, it works on my machine, right? But it's not working on your machine. So basically containers, you can think like a box, and you put all the things like the code and the dependencies and everything, database, front end, back end, and you ship that container to your friend, right? Okay, try to run this, and now it will make sure that it's running. So that is like, it's like, in terms, I can go on and on about this, like virtualization versus containerization. So containers are like, we don't need like a separate operating system. It can run on top of like the host operating system, which makes it really fast, for example. But talking about like when did I first encounter like the data on Kubernetes part? So yeah, when we're talking about data on Kubernetes, so if your container dies, for example, so the data in it is also gone. But that is the reason, like when we're talking about stateful applications, so the key point to keep in mind over here is that it requires persistent storage. Now, what do we mean by that is that you have so many containers running, and if any one of the containers, stop working and it restarts the container, your data will not be lost. Why? Because it's stored in some third-party volume, right? So some hard disk or like cloud provider or something like that. But now there's a limitation to this, because now this requires more work, and more likely like a state management system or something like that. And also one more thing is like many applications that are now being deployed in the containers, they were not written with containerization in mind, because it's relatively new, right? So there's like a lot of overhead in order to convert this into, most of the time what happens is like, if you want to convert such an application, there's like a completely a redesign on the fundamental architecture. So hence, in this case, statefulness can be a better choice, because why do we even use, like, let's talk about stateless applications. So stateless application are mostly like do not store the data of the application or the state of the your Kubernetes cluster in like a persistent storage. What is the advantage of this? The advantage is pretty simple. Like this is a very simple architecture, for example. So you don't have to worry about all the states and all these things, and you don't have to worry about these container. Okay, if my container dies and some other containers get started, will it affect like other containers or other volumes? No, you don't have to worry about that. A good example for this can be a fronted application can be stateless, right? So you can deploy multiple replicas for that, and it can increase the availability. And let's say more people are using your app, so you can scale it up. Not more people are using it, so you can scale it down. And that is how it is. And regarding these containers and like pods is like the basic scheduling unit in Kubernetes. So it does not have like a unique identification, right? It does not mean like, okay, if this pod is died, so I cannot, like, if I need to start some new pod, I would have to work with, I would have to transfer that data to the new pod or something like that. That is not what is happening in stateless apps. And that is the advantage of it, that it's pretty simple. But on the other hand, like in stateful applications, this is the case. Like when the data is like there's this thing called the CAP theorem. So, for example, if you modify an entry in database one, there's a database. You modify an entry over there with the pod one, and now when you access the same database from pod two, obviously two things should happen. You should get the data that was modified, right? Or you should get an error message. Now that is known as like your consistency. But this is getting in the way of availability, because that is the whole idea about a distributed system, right? To maintain availability, high availability. Like if something goes down, then something else can come up. So that is the idea over there. So this can be solved by having, let's say, okay, what we can do is like just have a one single centralized database, and that is something like it's a also a very like not a very good approach, because if that database goes down, then that's
You're
gone.
gonna have a serious problem.
Yeah. So that was about like consistency, availability. Now the third thing is known as partition tolerance. What that means is like you have to have a decentralized way of storing persistent data in a cluster, and this is commonly known as network partitioning. So, for example, in simple terms, your cluster should be able to survive the failure of nodes running on the stateful applications. So when you're talking about, like, to sum up, when we're talking about like stateful applications, you have to find a balance between these three. So again, like that is to the last point, which is when to use which, right? Which is a very important point. So it's
because
again
because
totally
that's it. Is that like,
yeah.
I always try to say this in some ways, for some people that are really purists, our community, I don't think we're trying to put a gun to anyone's head saying it always has to be this or it always has to be that. Will there be a future maybe where everything is done statefully? There could be, but for the time being, I think it's very important to take the use case factor into account and to not feel like it's one size fits all.
Most definitely. And the stateless applications also, like sometimes they trick us, right? So sometimes they can even though it's stateless, they can save little bit of details about you. For example, like the HTTP cookies, it's a good example for that. But regarding using stateful applications, specifically like talking about Kubernetes, so there's so many resources available, like PVs, like persistent volumes. There are volume plugins, and there's storage classes, and there's stateful states, and there's this thing called container storage interface, CSI. So it's basically it's a standard to expose the file storage system to containerized workloads. And I believe the whole I was reading about it, like the limitations, right? Why statefulness is not yet over there. Like it's a work in progress, but like it's not as much there with the statelessness right now, is because of the let's say you have some pods and some containers and everything running in a cluster, and now you need to scale that up to another cluster. So there's this thing of copying the volume from one cluster to another cluster. I forgot the name of the projects, but I see many people are trying to solve this issue. So we're getting there. But regarding to sum up, like when to use which one, totally like depends on the use case. Like it totally depends on what kind of app you are building. So if you require if you don't worry about the state of your application, you want like a quick and temporary solution and things like that. So for that, stateless is a good way to go. But if your app requires like more memory on what happens from from like one session of your application to another session of your application, so in that case, like stateful would be a way to go.
Good.
But yeah,
Very
I
good.
mean,
No. And the thing is
also,
that, yeah, this is, we've had, like I said, we've had 36 meetups now at this point, and it's been very, very good to hear all the different voices in all the different situations from folks from, I think we've had 10 to 15 different countries on. And so that's the thing, it's not just that it's a unique situation that's only happened in one place, that more and more people are having these use cases, are finding these situations where it does make sense. And so looking at these two things, stateless versus stateful, like I said, the more these conversations come up, the more it seems like, okay, this isn't just such a crazy idea. There are lots and lots of people that are finding the same solutions that are working. And just as you've explained it very, very well, I'm curious though and once again, it's because a lot of folks might think like, we're talking to someone who's 22 years old. How is it, that once again, is it perhaps you don't need a PhD or 15 years experience working as a systems admin or DevOps or SRE or things like that? I'm just curious, what were the resources that you've used to learn about this?
One of the best resources is the K8s documentation. It's pretty amazing. And I believe for DevOps related stuff, getting hands-on experience is one of the most important things. Does not matter how many tutorials you are watching, right? If you're not trying out things hands-on, you will not get the feeling. For that, Katacoda.com is great. So they have like interactive tutorials. Other than that, running it on your local system, that you can use like Minikube and stuff. So Minikube is basically like, it will have a cluster on your local machine. You can, obviously not for production, but like for testing purposes. So you can try out Minikube on your system. There's KubeADM, for example, for some other things apart from like Minikube. And other than that, there's like cloud providers. So you can also use cloud providers. So yeah, experimenting with different things, I believe, is very important. So the way I did was everything is available on the Kubernetes documentation. And there's like a tutorial section over there as well. And over there, I was just looking at like various things, and the docs are really good. And I was trying out, for example, if I'm learning about like, for example, endpoints and ingress, for example, and all these things. So I would probably like read about it and try to apply that in my own application, right? Some simple application that I made. I remember like I first tried to Dockerize a simple Node application, a to-do app I made. So just getting started and getting some hands-on experience, this is very important. And regarding resources, there's no shortage of resources, right? On YouTube, I see many people have like some amazing tutorials on K8s and DevOps part. And yeah, so just you can just Google and go to YouTube and stuff and type it out and just get started with it. And other than that, this is one most important point, which is not just for K8s, but in general for learning, is whatever you're learning, make sure you apply that somewhere. This is the most important point, because this is something like when I'm talking about applying, right? This can be done in many ways. So for example, you're learning web development, so you can make a project teach someone, conduct a workshop, and what else? Write a blog, contribute to some open source project. So many ways you can contribute. Make a video on YouTube, for example.
And for
So, yeah.
example, in your case, because you are a major content creator, when did you start making YouTube videos?
Yeah, that's a good point. I should probably mention that I started a YouTube channel like, I don't know, last year, April, March, and it's been like a few months only, relatively new channel. It's called Code for Cause. And basically what we're trying to do is promote open source software among students and other developers as well. Not just for, initially it was just for students, but now people from various parts of the world are joining. So yeah, that's the whole idea. I'm super close to 50,000 subscribers. So
it's working.
Pretty exciting.
We can say it's working.
Yeah.
But I think it's the same thing, is that you realize that you as a user will frequently go to YouTube to look for tutorials, to get that kind of info. And that's the thing, is that I think for a lot of folks out there, it might seem harder than it really is. Would you agree?
Yeah. The thing is, like, I can be honest about this. The thing is, like, people are struggling with finding the right resources and not just getting started. For example, I get questions we have a channel where a lot of students hang out over there. They are like, hey, can someone suggest me this is literally the message I got. Can someone suggest me the best resource for Kubernetes? That is a very relative term, right? Best means like things work out differently for different people, right? Some people like learning from documentation. Some people like learning from video tutorials.
This is true.
It's totally up to the person. So it's not like there's like a one best tutorial. So I would suggest just get started. And the one thing I want to mention over here is, when we're talking about such like getting started with such things, mostly people, what they want is a well-defined what is the word I'm looking for here? Content. Like, first I need to do this, then this, then this, then this. For that, I would suggest like you can go over to the website. It covers everything in a really nice way.
I think that's a good point. And I think it's also, like you said, there are many different ways of learning, and that's something that we're trying to do a better job in our community, is to provide as many different ways as possible, through art, through music, through videos, I mean, there are lots of, because
yeah,
like
I saw
people learn a lot.
Videos.
Yeah, okay, good. So people learn, because that's the thing, people learn in lots of different ways. And I think that's another thing about communities. And now we can talk about that a little bit more, is that what are the resources that because like I said, is that I think communities sometimes are just seen in a very strictly technical way. And while that might be a thing that people have in common, I personally believe, and I'm curious what you think about this, that you should try to add more in order to make it a deeper and richer experience. What are the things, because you're involved in lots of different communities, what are things that, in your opinion, make communities work well?
So communities, first of all, have to be inclusive, right? That is a very important point. Other than that, like, inclusiveness also comes with, like, having a welcoming community, and basically you should have like an action item. For example, if someone is looking at your GitHub repo for your project, so in the README file, you can definitely mention like, hey, this is the Discord channel or Slack channel or the mailing list that you can join to ask questions. And for example, people also have this like contributing.md file, right? Over there, people mention like, hey, these are the ways you can get started with the project, and these are the ways you can contribute. That's the second thing. The third thing is, if I'm talking about specifically from like the contribution point of view, so having good first issues and welcoming issues on GitHub. I also want to share like the community I started 7-8 months ago. We're going to be participating in Google Summer of Code this year. So super stoked.
Very nice. That. Great piece of news to hear. That's good.
Yeah. So our projects are basically focused on projects for social good, and we have received a tremendous amount of support from students, and like they are now working on the projects. And one of the challenges what we face are like so many students, so less issues to work on. Everyone is like, hey, can you assign me this issue? Can you assign me this issue? That is what we're continuously doing, where we recently now also are developing a project board where we can also mention like the to-do tasks and in-progress tasks and all these things. So having like a content, like basically you mentioned, like having some to-do action item where students can, get involved and showcase like, okay, I can, basically you need, in your community, you need to have a platform where students can, or not just students, but like in general, community members can reach out and showcase like, hey, these are my skill sets. this is how I can improve, and this is how I can help the community. And then the inclusiveness part comes in, and it's like, yeah, sure, why not? K8s, for example, you can contribute to docs, release, contributor experience, testing, APIs, so many things, right? So there's something for everyone. So yeah, that's what we are also trying to do. Like we have like separate communities for like documentation and the social accounts, and like the GitHub, and like the social projects, open source projects. And that is what I've seen in a lot of projects as well, like in CNCF. Like it's a like very welcoming, and just having this platform is basically what I'm saying, where people can just get involved. And because if someone is getting involved in the community, and obviously they want to do something for the community, right? They want to see like, okay, how can I contribute? And even if they don't want to do something, they just are trying to see, okay, what's going on over here, and what are all these amazing things that these people are doing, and how can I contribute? Or just people, mostly people are also like looking around, right? Because many people are like, okay, I'm hearing a lot about Kubernetes, let's see what all the fuss is about. So just looking around in the community and seeing. So that's also okay, no worries in that. So these looking around thing and just discovering stuff, for this you need to have that content, and that content is something I mentioned already, like platforms where people can just collaborate.
No, I think it's a really, really good point. And like you said as well too, is that like the notion of you want to build something, make it easy for people. Say like, you want something to do, we've got this list for people that don't have so much experience and people that have more experience. But I think that's really is being able to plug people into that as quickly as possible. Going back to the subject of data, right? Because like we were talking about stateful, stateless, et cetera. But let's take a step back from that. Is that from folks with that are studying, that might be a bit younger. I'm curious as to how folks that age are introduced to the data space. You can talk about databases in your experience. What were some of the first databases that you worked with?
Simple stuff like Firebase, NoSQL, MongoDB, running in my own applications on my local system, maybe using Cloud Atlas and like MongoDB Cloud Atlas, and just working with my own like personal projects is the word I'm looking for is. But yeah, that's how we are introduced, I believe. But again, like.
But I think it's also, as you said as well too, is that it's one thing to learn it, but if you really want to learn something, find a way to apply it, make it stick.
Exactly.
Find something to plug that into, because if not, it goes in one ear and goes out the other.
Yeah. So starting with these things at a basic level is totally okay, because that's how we start, right? We start with the basic contributions, and then we go ahead and see, okay, I know about all these things now. How can I even apply that in a more larger scale? For that larger scale, open source is the good to go. And open source and some nice internships maybe you can do. But if you're, let's say, not getting internships in your initial years of college, open source is great for that. And not just in terms of getting internships in the future and building a networks and connection, but also like, because why do people do internships? Gaining skills and experience, you can get that via open source as well. So yeah.
Very, very good. Good stuff. Now, as someone who's very active and very busy, I want to know, what are your next steps? I mean, I'm sure you get asked this a lot, but like, and it might be difficult to devise a sort of 5-year plan, but based on all the things that you're doing right now, what is it that you would like to be doing more, that you'd like to be adding on? Because you've got Code for Cause, you've got Major League Hacking, you've got everything under the sun. You're doing podcasts, you're doing meetups, you're doing all these different things. You're creating content on YouTube. What are the things that you're looking forward to being involved in the future? What's the next step? And also, what do you hope to see other young people doing in the future as well?
Sure. That's a good question, and really makes me think. So, future plans, right? Currently, like contributor experience SIG is very welcoming, and we were like, it was like my second or third meetup, I believe, and already I got a task assigned. And Keslin has been like really welcoming and helpful. So I have a meeting with them like afterwards, and probably going to be more actively contributing to K8s and other CNCF projects. So that is one thing. I also want to help out with the community part of various projects like this. So recently what I'm doing is there's this program we have started, not a program, it's more like a series of webinars. It's currently ongoing. So it's called Spring of Code. So basically what we did was...
Right. Yes. That's very good.
Yeah.
We'll have to put some links into that later, but yeah, go ahead.
So basically what we're doing is getting open source project maintainers onto our channel. And basically we're having like a discussion about what the organization is about, what the project is about, what is the tech stack they're using, what are the prerequisites, resources, how to get started, and general stuff like live Q&A, for example. So the whole idea is to get more people involved in their projects. So we had like Open Policy Agent, we have like TensorFlow and like Flutter, Python Software Foundation projects and like Red Hat and Facebook, Google, so many like I'm in talk with like some people from K8s as well, doing a session on contributing to Kubernetes, and it's been received well received so far by a lot of amazing people. And yeah, I believe it's a really uh, helping a lot of people in terms of getting started with contributing. So yeah, regarding the future plan, I'm gonna continue with open source and the coding aspect of it as well. Other than that, helping out with the community part of a few projects. So I have recently also developed an interest in like things like developer advocacy and developer relation, DevRel stuff. So I'm looking forward to learning more about that. And what else? I'm currently also learning. So I'm learning about system design, distributed systems and stuff. Yeah, I got a scholarship from Linux Foundation in there for their system administration course and an exam. So I'll probably give that. So shout out to Linux Foundation for giving me the opportunity. Other than that, yeah, gonna work on the YouTube channel, post more content related to DevOps stuff. I was planning on doing weekly series on like more hands-on series on various cloud native tech, starting with Kubernetes, Docker, and system administration and Golang, for example. So yeah, looking forward to that. But yeah, that's pretty much about it. And in
Pretty much
summers, I
about
don't know.
you know, 2 or 3 minor projects. My question is this as well, is that because we were talking about this before we got started. You know, in your free time, you mentioned one of the things you like to do is going to the mountains. How do you relate the things that you like to do in your free time? Apart from that, when you get free time, how do you relate, you know, your things that you have in, we could say more personal interest or hobbies or things like that, and all the other work that you're doing?
Yeah, the work I'm doing is remote. So we are working remotely. Most people are working remotely. So that is something I can do from anywhere, right? The reason for my going to different places is just like New Delhi gets really humid in winter, in summers. So that is something like, and I have a MacBook Pro 16-inch. This gets like 100 degrees Celsius in summers. So I cannot work in Delhi with this laptop. So I like traveling. I like going to new places. But recently, I was not doing it for like a year because of the COVID travel safety and stuff. But currently, I believe it's like going to nearby places is okay, following the safety precautions. So yeah, I mean, sometimes it's also important to like take a break. Taking a break is important. Make sure you don't get burnout, for example. So when I'm working for a long time or for a continuous amount of time, might go, for 2 to 3 days somewhere, just relax and fuel up and things like that. But yeah, most of the work like I'm doing is currently I'm like doing the team lead at the Major League Hacking Fellowship. So the MLS Fellowship is basically a program started by Major League Hacking to promote. It's like a virtual internship alternative, and basically students are working on open source projects by my pod, particularly Facebook, and like more on Python data focus. So the program is sponsored by GitHub, Facebook, AWS, and so many other organizations, Dev.to. So my role is basically to supervise contributions in these projects. So we have like a stand-up daily, and yeah, I recently went on a vacation in the mountains, like you mentioned. So from there, I was doing my stand-ups and everything. So yeah, I mean, like it's good. I mean, remote work is working out pretty well so far, but like again, it's not an option for everyone, because some people do require to be in person. For example, my fellow friends who are from branches like mechanical and electrical, so they need more of a hands-on experience in the college labs and stuff. For them, it's necessary. Me being from computer science, I just need my laptop, right?
And you can be doing it from anywhere. But I think it's a really good point. What you mentioned is that, once again, is that, like I said, it's no secret that you're a very, very active person. But I think it's important to be that active, to also have free time, like you said, to recharge your batteries, get a break, avoid burnout.
Time management is important.
That's really, really important.
See, you have to figure out your priorities, and there's this table, like there's this table called like time management table. I forgot the name. It has 4 quadrants. It has like urgent, not urgent, important, not important. For example, something that lies in not important and not urgent, I discard that. I don't do it. So yeah, that's something that is important and urgent. Do it right now. So
because I think that's kind of the thing as well too, because what we were saying is that there are so many different ways that folks get involved in open source projects, Kubernetes, etc. You don't need to do everything all at once. Do it piece by piece, enjoy it, and really enjoy the technical part, but also really enjoy the human part of being able to meet. We met, I don't know how long ago, but not that long ago. And through this, we'll probably introduce each other to other people. All those things are really, really positive. So don't just see it on the technical side. Like we were saying, YouTube videos, podcasts, documentation, all the things are really, really good, but also balance that out with the human factor of being able to meet folks, to learn from other people, to be able to teach other people. There are lots of opportunities out there. All right. So Kunal, we're almost out of time. And I just want to know, we talked about a lot of things. I think I've learned a lot in the sense of how to be proactive. I would say there's no wrong way to start. But you were mentioning as well about, asking for help, getting feedback, giving feedback, learning how to ask good questions. I think those are things that are applicable for young people as well as older people. But what would you say is your main message as someone who's involved in so many different things? If you had to, consolidate it into just one thing, what's the most important message that you think you could share with our community right now?
Loving what you do is the most important thing, because that is the reason I'm able to put my hands in so many things at once. And it's also like, if you feel like you're getting burnt out, then you should take it seriously, because it's not good. If you feel like, hey, I'm a little burnt out this week, just take a break, set your priorities, and for the day, I would suggest, like, the way I do it is having long-term goals and then having short-term goals that reach towards accomplishing that goal. And for day-to-day activities, set a realistic goal, right? I used to make this mistake. I was like, filling up my to-do list for the day. I was like, today I'll do everything. I'll just clear all the deadlines and I'll just, do everything today. In the end, that does not work out practically. You will feel tired, and you'll feel like, okay, because you will never feel satisfied. And that is the point the balance you need to find. Like, okay, I'm doing good, because every person has their own pace, be that with contributing or learning. Someone learns really fast. Someone learns slowly. It's totally okay. Just like go with your pace. Try to see that you're not getting burnout. And the most important thing, loving what you do is the key to managing things. So do make sure that you're having fun, like Bart mentioned. Open source is great. Communities are great. Hopefully when the in-person event starts, those are fun as well. KubeCon is a lot of fun. You meet a lot of people. And that's what I would suggest. Do
I think
things.
I think it's a great message, because we talk about, crazy topics all the time, like data pipelines and data resilience and container attached storage and all these kind of things. But at the end of the day, there's a really powerful, simpler human message behind all this that I think you just beautifully expressed, is that if you love what you do, everything else kind of falls into place. So make sure that you keep that present too, in everything, in order to get the most out of it, in order to have that contagious energy that you very much have, and that other folks do that are very passionate about what they're doing. And it doesn't matter where they are, you see it and you perceive it. Kunal, thank you very, very much for your time today. This was super interesting. We will see each other later in the SIG meeting. I'll be a little bit late because I have something else I have to do. So you can tell Matt and the other folks that I'm going to be a little bit late. But anyway, I don't think this is going to be the last time we're going to have you on our meetup. It was super good to have you here, though, and very much looking forward to all the things you're going to be doing. Any links or things like that you want to share where people can find you? You mentioned Code for Cause earlier, Major League Hacking, YouTube channel. Anything else you want to leave folks with before we finish? Very, very
sure.
good.
If you want to, I've shared my Twitter, there's this YouTube thing. So my YouTube has a lot of stuff going on at the homepage. So to make it more streamlined, just look at the playlist section. So over there, there's also a complete machine learning bootcamp I did. It's I don't know, 30 to 40 hours of content, full on hands-on. And so many playlists are over there. So it will basically help you in navigating. And anytime you can reach out to me if you want to learn about stuff, or just, just have a conversation and share something or just, share the good work you're doing, getting started with open source contributions. And if you want to be a part of the community, for example. So I'm always open. My DMs are always open. And really looking forward to, I love meeting new people. I love hearing their stories. So don't be shy.
That's exactly why we're here, is because you're not shy, you're very open, and that's why these things happen quickly. So seriously, take advantage of it. Get in touch with Kunal. Very, very exciting to be with you here today, and enjoy the rest of your Friday.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Bart, for having me. And this was amazing. And
Yeah.
yeah, see you later. Bye bye.
We'll be seeing you soon. Take care, man. Cheers.